In the heart of his sprawling Zahram Palace, the billionaire Sheikh Rashid Al Fayed exuded an air of absolute command. His dark eyes, usually cold and calculating, flickered with a rare hint of unease as he dismissed the nanny who had cared for his children for nearly a decade. To him, the matter was business, swift, decisive, and unquestionable. Yet, in those quiet halls, echoing with opulence and silence, the ripple of that action would soon become a storm. Outside, light spare, the golden sands of the emirate shimmered under the relentless sun, painting a vast canvas of power and tradition. Fragrant scents of oud and jasmine floated through ornate halls, mingling with the muffled whispers of servants and the distant call of desert winds. Every corner of the palace spoke of wealth accrued over generations, a kingdom resting on secrets as much as gold. Rashid was a man born to rule, not merely lands, but the lives entwined under his roof. His control was ironclad, extending even to the smallest gestures of his children's lives. The nanny, a young woman named Layla, was his trusted guardian for those formative years. But today, the glint of suspicion shadowed Rashid's gaze. Whispers of betrayal had reached his ears, shadows threatening to sully his pristine household. Without hesitation, he severed ties, convinced that cutting out this one element would restore order. Layla stood silently in the grand foyer, her hands clenched at her sides. Her heart ached as she gathered the scant possessions allowed to leave with her. No jewels, no luxuries, just the weight of an unspoken truth. She stooped to embrace the twins, whose innocent eyes reflected confusion and dawning sorrow. Their small hands clung to her robes, trembling between hope and fear. "You can't do this," the little boy whimpered, voice cracking. Rashid's jaw tightened. "This is final," he said, his tone devoid of softness, but not without the tremor of a buried vulnerability. To his children, he was a fortress, unyielding and severe. But beneath the facade, a storm of regret was gathering, trapped behind his stoic mask. The palace grew silent after she left, a void more profound than any grand chamber could hold. The children's whispers haunted the marble halls, cracks forming in the illusion of perfection Rashid had so carefully constructed. But the story did not end with quiet dismissal. Weeks later, the tension exploded in a sterile courtroom, the place where power was tested not by gold, but by truth. Layla, with trembling voice and fierce resolve, revealed secrets long buried beneath the gleaming surface of Zahram Palace. Dark alliances, betrayals cloaked in luxury, and the unseen scars etched on those living under Rashid's rule. The gallery was hushed. The Sheikh's empire, once untouchable, was fracturing before witnesses. The facade shattered, exposing vulnerabilities Rashid had fought desperately to conceal. Forced to confront his demons, Rashid stood at a crossroads between preserving an empire built on silence and seeking justice defined by sacrifice. As the judge's gavel echoed, Rashid's eyes met Layla's, a silent challenge and a plea. Loyalties were tested, desires complicated, and the very meaning of family redefined in the fiery crucible of this battle. What truth lay buried? deeper. And what price would Rashid pay to reclaim his throne and his soul? If this tale has gripped your heart this far, subscribe now to journey deeper into the secrets of the Billionaire Sheikh. Don't forget to like and share your thoughts. What secrets do you think will surface next in this palace of power and betrayal? Your guesses keep the story alive. The grand doors of Zahram Palace closed behind Layla with a soft, hollow thud that echoed through the gilded halls like a mournful sigh. Rashid Al-Fayed stood motionless by the vast window overlooking the endless desert, the amber light of dusk casting long shadows across the intricately woven carpets. The silence was suffocating, filled only by the faint murmur of servants, whispering anxiously behind closed doors. His heart, armored and resolute for years, throbbed with an ache he refused to acknowledge. Layla's departure was a singular fracture in his meticulously ordered world, but the tension it unleashed was anything but contained. The twins, Hassan and Amina, wandered the palace corridors, clinging to their small, bittersweet memories of her warmth, a light gone too suddenly from their young lives. Their innocent faces, full of questions with no answers, haunted Rashid's restless nights. He did not see himself as cruel, only as decisive. But beneath the cold command lay a man wrestling with desperate fears, of betrayal, of losing what little control remained in a life ruled by expectation and tradition. Days passed like flickers of burning incense, lingering yet elusive. Behind the palace walls, rumors blossomed like desert roses, sweet petals concealing thorns. Whispers of Layla's shocking declarations had reached even the inner circle of the Zahram family. Secrets that deserved to remain buried, now threatening to unravel the empire Rashid had forged through decades of iron will and careful alliances. One evening, the silence in the opulent study was broken by the soft scrape of footsteps. Rashid's gaze lifted sharply as Samira, his sister and closest confidant, entered. Her usually composed expression was shadowed with concern. "Sheikh," she said quietly, closing the door behind her with a measured click. "The court hearing is tomorrow. Layla's testimony has stirred unease. Even some on your council question the old ways now." Rashid's jaw clenched harder than leather. "I will face whatever storm comes. Zahram Palace will not crumble because of a servant's bitter lies." Samira stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "But what if they are truths, Rashid? What if the palace's foundation rests on more than just gold and loyalty? What if the cracks run deeper than you dare admit?" His dark eyes flickered with a rare vulnerability, the weight of 1,000 unspoken regrets pressing down like the desert sun. "Then I will rebuild, stronger, wiser. The throne is mine, not to fall to whispers or treachery." The days that followed were a tempest of whispered counsel, closed-door meetings, and restless nights shadowed by the looming court appearance. Rashid immersed himself in strategy, each word spoken and action planned with ruthless precision. Yet, in solitary moments, the memories clawed at him. The soft laughter of the twins, Layla's gentle touch, the fragile loyalty once given freely. On the morning of the hearing, the palace was cloaked in tense anticipation. Courtiers moved like shadows, eyes darting with unspoken fears. Rashid, clad in a tailored white thobe embroidered with silver threads, stood like a monolith as he was escorted through the marbled corridors toward the courtroom. A modern arena where power wore the guise of law. Inside the chamber, Layla sat poised yet resolute, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes, sharp and defiant, met Rashid's with no trace of fear, only the raw pain of betrayal and the fierce determination of a woman who would not be silenced. The judge's voice was steady, summoning the room to order, but the real verdict was already unfolding in the charged atmosphere between them. Layla's voice, when she spoke, was steady though, edged with emotion. Tales of hidden debts and dangerous bargains concealed beneath the palace's glittering surface, of whispered threats in the dead of night, of a web of silence that had protected some and imprisoned others. Each word struck like a knife, unraveling years of enforced perfection. Rashid felt the foundations of his carefully constructed world tremble, the old fortress of his resolve beginning to crack. His eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. The first time in years someone had pierced the armor. Yet, as Layla spoke, another truth pressed against the walls of his heart, one he could not ignore. Among the accusations was a revelation he had buried deep, his own hand in shadows he once believed necessary, mistakes made in pursuit of preserving his legacy at any cost. The courtroom held its breath as the judge's gavel pounded the wood, a hard echo punctuating the fragile silence. Outside, the sun slipped below the horizon, bathing Zahram Palace in fading gold that soon surrendered to the cool blue of twilight. Back within those walls, Rashid's gaze locked with Layla's once more, a silent promise that their battle was far from over. The fury, the regrets, the unspoken desires tangled irrevocably in that glance. "Your secrets have shattered the silence, Layla," he thought bitterly. "But what will you do when the Empire fights back?" As the last word in court faded, a messenger arrived in the palace, bearing a glazed envelope sealed with a mysterious emblem no one had seen before. Rashid broke the wax carefully, and the letter inside was brief, but its message was clear and chilling. Truth is only the beginning. Beware the shadows that follow. The weight of those words settled heavily on Rashid's shoulders. The palace felt colder now, a realm not just of gold and power, but of unseen threats weaving ever closer. He folded the letter slowly, a fire kindling in his obscured gaze. The war for his soul and the kingdom he ruled was just beginning. But somewhere deep in the blaze of turmoil, a single thought defied the chaos. Perhaps the greatest betrayal was yet to come. The letter lay folded on the ornate desk, its chilling message cutting through the palace's opulent silence like a sudden desert storm. Rashid's fingers trembled slightly as he released the seal, the scent of aged parchment mingling with the faint aroma of oud that lingered in the air. Truth was no longer a luxury he could afford. It was a weapon aimed directly at the fragile heart of Zahram Palace. Samira's footsteps echoed softly behind him, her presence steady, yet her eyes betrayed the storm she barely contained. "What will you do, Rashid?" she asked, voice low. "The message, it's not just a warning, it's a promise. Something else is coming." He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze drifted to the endless dunes beyond the tall windows, where the sun had vanished, leaving behind a sapphire sky streaked with fading gold. The desert was merciless, like the path Rashid now faced, unpredictable, unforgiving. In the following days, the palace's atmosphere turned oppressive. Courtiers and advisors moved like shadows, cautious, whispering in corners, their eyes darting furtively. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath, as if anticipating the next blow. Rashid immersed himself in the whirlwind of preparations, yet an undercurrent of doubt gnawed at his resolve. The weight of Layla's words, the cracks in his carefully guarded facade, they haunted him beyond reason. He found no solace in his authority, no peace in the walls lined with gold and silk. One evening, as the crimson sun dipped low, Rashid found himself alone in the grand hall, where the twins, Hassan and Amina, had once run laughing through its marble floors. Now their absence was a hollow echo that thrummed in his chest. The flickering light of a single candle cast long shadows as his fingers traced the intricate patterns engraved on the armrest of the throne. His mind raced, a madhouse of memories and fears. Why had Layla spoken out after all these years? Was it betrayal or salvation? Could the empire he had built survive the secrets she unearthed? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft rustle behind him. Turning sharply, he found Anisa, the woman who had entered his life like a desert breeze, gentle but persistent, standing quietly in the doorway. Her eyes, dark pools of empathy and something deeper, searched his face. "Rashid," she said cautiously, stepping closer. "You don't have to face this battle alone." He studied her. Anisa, the resilient woman born from a world so different from his, had proven as elusive as the desert mirage, and yet as real as the pulse racing beneath his skin. Her presence challenged the cold certainty he usually commanded. "I am not a man accustomed to weakness," he replied quietly, voice rough with exhaustion. "But this is more than power. It is survival." Anisa reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his. A spark flickered between them, a fragile bridge over the abyss of trust and betrayal. "Then let me stand with you," she said simply, "not as a servant or shadow, but as an ally. This palace, these walls, they hold more than secrets. They hold a future. But only if you are willing to fight for it." Rashid's dark eyes softened for just a moment, before hardening again. The fire within him, the same fire that had built empires, ignited anew. "Very well," he said. "But know this, Anisa. The enemy wears many faces. We cannot afford mistakes." Her nod was resolute. Together, they turned toward the inner sanctum of Zahram Palace, where the heart of the storm awaited. Meanwhile, whispers reached unexpected ears. Malik, Rashid's chief advisor, stood in the shadowed alcove of the council chamber, watching the subtle shifts of allegiance. His lips curved into a sly smile. He thrived in chaos, and the palace's unraveling was an opportunity long awaited. "There are secrets yet untouched," Malik murmured to himself, "and some will cost more than loyalty." As days folded into nights, the court hearing's aftermath faded, but its scars remained raw. Layla's revelations stirred unrest, but something far darker bred in silence. Rashid sensed eyes watching, waiting, not just from within his walls, but from the vast desert beyond, where unseen players moved their pieces carefully. One night, under a veil of stars, Rashid met with a trusted envoy. The message was clear. Unknown forces questioned his reign, whispering of betrayals deeper than Layla's testimony. The letter had been only the first salvo in a silent war waged through secrets and shadows. He clenched his fists, the veins throbbing against his skin. The empire, his legacy, teetered on the edge of ruin, not from the obvious foes, but from the unseen betrayers who hid behind the throne's glittering facade. Lost in thought, Rashid barely noticed Anissa's quiet approach until she was by his side again. "There is someone," she whispered, "someone who knows more than even Layla dared reveal. A name hidden in the palace's darkest corners." His breath hitched. Vulnerability, anger, and something unmistakably like hope flashed across his face. "Bind them," he ordered, voice sharp, "and bring them to me, alive." Anissa's glance held a silent promise. The palace felt colder still as the shadows deepened. Each step Rashid took forward was into a labyrinth of lies and forgotten promises. In the depths of Zahram Palace, a secret stirred, one that could shatter everything Rashid had fought to protect, or bind him forever to the cage of his own making. And just as the dawn threatened to break the desert's endless night, a single figure appeared beneath the rosewood archway of the palace gates. Cloaked in mystery, silhouette framed by the rising sun, the visitor's eyes gleamed with an undeniable truth. Rashid met that gaze and knew it was not the empire that would fall, but the illusion of control he had clung to all his life. The battle for Zahram Palace had only just begun. The moon hung low over Zahram Palace, casting silver light through the towering windows and painting elongated shadows on the marble floors. Rashid al-Fayed stood alone in the vast hall once filled with laughter, his dark eyes reflecting the cold glow as if wrestling with the fractured peace that Layla's revelations had shattered. The silence pressed around him, not the kind born of serenity, but the suffocating stillness before a storm's unrelenting fury. The letter's warning echoed relentlessly in his mind. Truth is only the beginning. Beware the shadows that follow. Words that twisted like barbs beneath his skin, stirring unease deeper than any court verdict. His fingers absent-mindedly traced the intricate carvings of his throne's armrest, the cool stone grounding him even as his thoughts spun wildly. The empire he had built with iron will now teetered precariously on the edge of ruin, not from obvious foes, but from invisible enemies cloaked in silence. From the shadows of the grand corridor, Anissa emerged quietly. Her presence was like a soft breeze weaving through the desert heat, unexpected but comforting. Her eyes, pools of steady warning and unspoken promises, met his without hesitation. "You cannot carry this burden alone," she whispered, stepping closer until the faint scent of jasmine from her silk robe mingled with the lingering aroma of oud in the air. Rashid shifted, the iron facade momentarily cracking to reveal exhaustion. "This palace is a fortress," he said, voice low, "built on secrets as much as stone. But even a fortress can fall if the walls crumble from within. Anis's gaze sharpened. Then we must find the source of the rot before it spreads. Their whispered alliance was barely interrupted when the heavy doors creaked open. Malik, the ever-watchful chief advisor, entered with a sly smile that carried no warmth. His eyes gleamed with calculated intent, words dripping with veiled threats. "The palace trembles, Sheikh. You've awoken forces better left sleeping. The game changes now, not with open swords, but with blades hidden in the shadows," Malik murmured, voice silk over steel. Rashid's gaze darkened, exhaustion giving way to the familiar fire of command. "Then let them come. Zahram Palace has weathered worse storms." But inside, a quiet fear gripped him, the sense that the palace's very heart was bleeding secrets, far more dangerous than any courtroom drama. Later that night, the twins' laughter haunted his dreams, sharp and distant, like a melody fading into silence. Hassan and Amina were too young to understand betrayal, yet they felt its chill in the sudden absence of Layla. Rashid pressed his palm to the cool window pane, staring out where endless dunes rolled beneath the star-streaked sky, longing for a time when their innocence shielded them from this darkness. But time no longer offered refuge. Minutes later, a soft knock drew him back to the present. Anisa returned, her expression unreadable. "There's word from the outer provinces," she said, voice taut but steady. "Whispers of unrest, alliances shifting in ways none expected. Someone inside your court is not what they seem." A shiver crawled up Rashid's spine. The palace was a labyrinth of masks and half-truths. Unmasking the true conspirators would require more than watchful eyes. "Find the one who sent this letter, the signature on the seal," he ordered, breaking the waxed envelope back open. The emblem was unfamiliar, a symbol buried deeper than any family crest. "This is no idle threat. It is a summons." Anisa nodded, already turning toward the corridors shrouded in darkness. "I will move quickly." He lingered in the silence, a prisoner to memories and regret. His mind replayed Layla's testimony, the accusations of debt, betrayal, and sacrifice hidden beneath the palace's golden grandeur. Had he been a ruler or a tyrant blinded by ambition? In that moment, the vast hall seemed colder, the polished marble floors reflecting his isolation. The burden of power, once a mantle of pride, now felt like a chain tightening with every passing step. Suddenly, the distant echo of hurried footsteps disturbed the stillness. A messenger appeared in the threshold, breathless, clutching a small, sealed scroll. Rashid snatched it from trembling hands, breaking the seal with fingers that betrayed no emotion. The message was brief, but devastating. "The past you bury will rise. Trust no shadow within your walls." Rashid's heart hammered fiercely. This palace, his realm, was a battlefield invisible to the eye, where allies could be enemies, and every whispered word a potential dagger. He folded the note slowly, eyes narrowing with fierce determination. If the foundation of his empire rested on secrets, then it must be rebuilt on truth, no matter the cost. As the palace clock chimed midnight, Rashid found himself standing before the ornate mirror in his private chambers. His reflection stared back, a man hardened by years, yet haunted by the soft echoes of those he'd pushed away. A sudden knock broke the heavy silence. The door creaked open, revealing Anissa once more. "I found someone," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "A keeper of secrets, a woman who saw what others wished hidden. She holds answers, answers that could either save you or tear Zahram Palace apart." Rashid's breath caught, the promise of revelation mingled with the threat of devastation. His dark eyes gleamed in the moonlight, fierce and unrelenting. "Bring her to me," he commanded, "alive." The air between them thickened, heat shifting like a summer storm about to break. Somewhere in the depths of Zahram Palace, beneath layers of gold and silk, the truths long buried stirred restlessly. And just as the first light of dawn began to stretch across the endless desert horizon, a shadow moved silently toward the palace gates. A figure cloaked in secrets and bearing the weight of a past that promised to consume them all. Rashid's heart tightened as their eyes met. This time, it was not the empire that was in jeopardy, but the fragile illusion of control he had clung to his entire life. The dawn's first light barely pierced the heavy curtains of Rashid Al-Fayed's private chambers. The faint glow painted his face in muted gold, revealing a man battling invisible storms beneath his carefully crafted mask. The letter's dire warning echoed relentlessly in his mind. "Truth is only the beginning. Beware the shadows that follow." Every muscle in his body tensed as he paced the cold marble floor. Zahram Palace, ordinarily a sanctuary of unspoken power and whispered loyalty, now felt like a cage lined with treachery. Anissa watched silently from the doorway, her presence steady like the desert winds outside. The softness in her eyes spoke volumes, unmeddled sympathy mixed with unwavering resolve. She stepped forward, breaking the tense silence. "You can't carry this alone, Rashid," she said quietly, voice barely above a caress. "The palace is full of ghosts, but not all of them are dead." He paused, his dark eyes briefly meeting hers, revealing a flicker of tired hope. "I built this empire to stand the test of time, yet the past I buried seems set to unravel everything." Her gaze sharpened. "Then we find what others want to keep hidden. We uncover the rot before it consumes the foundation." Before Rashid could respond, the heavy front doors creaked open with a measured solemnity. Malik appeared from the shadows, a predatory smile playing on his lips. His eyes gleamed with a dangerous mixture of amusement and calculation. He thrived on chaos. "The palace trembles, my sheikh," Malik murmured, voice velvety yet merciless. "You've stirred forces better left asleep. Now the real game begins, not with swords but with venom whispered behind backs." Rashid's jaw clenched. "Let them come. Zahram Palace has faced darker nights, but every shadow hides a face." Malik's smile deepened. "True, and some faces even you dare not trust." The air grew thick, the tension around Rashid tightening like a noose around his throat. Every corner of the palace, gilded and vast, seemed to close in, its luxury turning sinister. The scent of oud and jasmine mixed with the cold bite of treachery. Later, as twilight surrendered the sky to twilight blue, Rashid found himself alone in the grand hall. The gleaming floors bore the absence of smiles and children's laughter. The echoes of Hassan and Amina's joy, now ghosts haunting the marble. His fingers traced the delicate edges of an ornate vase, the cool ceramic grounding him against the tempest raging within. How fragile his reign felt, the first hints of crumbling beneath relentless pressures. Anissa stepped beside him, her presence a quiet anchor. "There are whispers beyond the palace walls," she said, voice low. "Unrest builds. In the outer provinces, alliances fracture. The serpent coils tighter within your court." Rashid's dark gaze narrowed. "Find who sent that letter, and the origin of these whispers. No stone unturned." "Already on it," Anissa replied, determination lighting her eyes. "But this enemy wears many masks. We must be careful whom we trust." Her words hung in the scented air like a warning. The palace's silken curtains might conceal whispers, but not secrets forever. That night, sleep fled Rashid's restless mind. His thoughts darted through shadows. Layla's defiant testimony, the reckless vulnerabilities it exposed, and the overwhelming burden of choices made in the name of power. Was ambition worth the price of fractured family? Whispers of betrayal clawed at him relentlessly. A sudden soft knock pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. Anissa returned, her expression grave. "I've found someone," she said, voice brittle with urgency. "A keeper of secrets. A woman who has witnessed shadows no one else dared confront. She knows things even Layla feared to speak." Rashid's pulse quickened. The promise of revelation shimmered with the threat of devastation. "Bring her to me," he ordered, voice sharp, but tempered with restrained desperation. "Alive. We'll need every truth if Zahram Palace is to survive what's coming." The candlelight flickered between them, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance with impending fate. Outside, the desert breeze whispered through date palms, shifting the sands as if signaling a storm on the horizon. Days passed in anxious silence, the palace's golden halls now filled with tentative glances and whispered schemes. Rashid moved through his duties, like a wraith, commanding yet haunted. Then, one evening, a messenger arrived at the gate bearing a sealed box heavy with the weight of secrets. Rashid broke open the seal with hands steady despite the pounding of his heart. Inside lay a collection of letters, unsigned but unmistakably linked to the mysterious emblem. Cryptic messages hinting at betrayals far beyond Layla's revelations. One letter caught his eye. "You've only scratched the surface, Sheikh, but true enemy is closer than you think. The lion may rule the sands, but even lions bleed when their pride is broken from within." The words burned like desert fire. A sudden chill swept through Rashid's bones. He understood then. The palace walls he thought impenetrable were riddled with cracks. Anissa's voice broke the heavy silence. "There is one more who could change the course of this war, but she fears what uncovering the truth might cost her." Rashid's gaze hardened, his resolve crystallizing amid the gathering shadows. "Then we have no choice," he said. "She must come forward, no matter the consequences. The fate of Zahram Palace depends on it." The chamber grew colder as the night deepened. Outside, stars blinked like distant witnesses to the palace's unfolding reckoning, and just before the first light of dawn crept over the sprawling desert, the gates opened silently once more. A single figure stepped through, cloak drawn tight, face cloaked in shadow, but eyes blazing with a truth that threatened to unravel everything Rashid had fought so fiercely to protect. Their gaze met, electric, charged, and filled with a promise that the battle for Zahram Palace had only just begun. The moonlight spilled like molten silver across the polished marble floors of Zahram Palace, casting intricate shadows that seemed to dance with whispered secrets. Rashid Al-Fayed stood in the heart of the grand hall, the weight of countless battles pressing down on him, not from outside foes, but from a war waged in silence within his own walls. The sealed letters lay scattered on the ornate desk beside him, each one a shard of betrayal sharper than the last. His dark eyes, usually so commanding and unyielding, betrayed the turmoil he fought to suppress. Every word dug deeper into his soul, unraveling the foundation he had spent decades constructing. Anissa's footsteps approached softly, her presence a calm harbor in the storm. She slid a thin dossier across the carved ebony surface. "This is what I have gathered," she said, voice low, almost tentative. "Whispers lead to someone trusted, closer than either of us imagined." Rashid's fingers clenched around the edge of the desk, knuckles white beneath the jade rings he always wore. "Names," he demanded, voice raw with barely concealed anger. "Give me names. If the serpent coils inside, I want to see its head." Anissa hesitated just a moment before sliding the folder towards him. "Alim Hakim," she whispered, "your most loyal advisor on the council. He has walked in shadows, playing both sides, not just for power, but for something far more personal." The silence between them thickened. Rashid's heart thundered, as if warning him this revelation might break him, or ignite a fury all the more fierce. "Alim," Rashid murmured, his voice a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. "I trusted him with my life, with my empire." Anissa's gaze was unwavering. "There are debts he owes, secrets he guards, and if those letters are any truth, Zahram Palace's downfall begins in the chambers he inhabits." His breath caught. The cruel twist of irony that the man who was meant to be his shield might be his undoing landed like a stone in his gut. Rashid's hand moved instinctively to the golden emblem at his throat, a family heirloom, a symbol of all he was meant to protect. Now, it felt like a noose. Beyond the silken curtains, the desert night stretched infinitely, as vast and merciless as the crossroads at which he stood. Suddenly, the heavy doors to the hall creaked open. Malik emerged from the shadows, his usual sly grin replaced by a tight, unreadable expression. His dark eyes flicked between Rashid and Anissa, ever calculating. "Find Alim," Rashid said, voice hard and decisive. "But do not confront him yet. I want to understand the full game before making my move." Malik bowed slightly. "As you command, Your Highness." The tension settled again, but Rashid's mind raced. Months of trust shattered in a heartbeat. His empire, threatened not by desert raiders or foreign powers, but by the intimacy of treason. Later, in the quiet solitude of his chambers, Rashid let the mask slip for a heartbeat. Memories flooded in. The laughter of Hassan and Amina, when Layla still cared for them. The fragile hope he had once clung to amid the cold opulence. His voice was barely a whisper. How did it come to this? Anissa stepped closer, her eyes soft but fierce. Because power without trust is a kingdom built on sand. Her words settled in the still air, as the first call to prayer echoed faintly in the distance. Before Rashid could respond, a soft knock echoed from the antechamber. His heart tightened, uncertain who or what to expect. The door slowly opened, revealing a figure cloaked in dark silk, face hidden beneath a veil, but eyes glinting with a defiant fire. "You summoned me," the woman said, voice steady and laced with caution. Rashid's gaze pierced through the shadows lining the room, searching for truth in her silent challenge. "Yes," he replied, "and I need to know everything you have kept." Hidden, a fragile breath lingered between them. She stepped forward, the faint scent of rose and sandalwood trailing in her wake, filling the space with a haunting familiarity. "My name is Zahra," she revealed, "and I have seen the palace bleed secrets no one dared to speak aloud. But what I carry, it could either save Zahram or destroy it." Rashid's jaw tightened. "Then speak quickly, because every moment wasted is a step closer to ruin." Zahra's lips curved in a faint, bittersweet smile before the room darkened with the weight of her confession. "There is more than one snake in the garden, Sheikh, and one of them is closer to you than you even suspect." The candlelight flickered wildly as if caught in a rising wind, shadows bending and twisting, as though echoing the tides turning within Zahram Palace itself. Rashid's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Before Zahra could answer, the palace trembled with the distant roll of thunder, not from the desert storm brewing outside, but from the gathering tempest within the palace gates. A sudden silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Then a sharp, urgent whisper from Zahra broke it. "They're coming, sooner than you think." Rashid's gaze snapped to the heavy doors as the first footsteps sounded, a cadence deliberate, confident, and unavoidable. He stepped forward, the fire reigniting in his chest. Not just the fire to protect his empire, but the fire to reclaim the truth, no matter the cost. Outside, the desert wind carried a promise. The war for Zahram Palace was far from over, and in the lengthening shadows, a new player moved closer, poised to tip the delicate balance of power. Rashid's breath caught as he realized the greatest betrayal was not past, but still waiting in the wings, ready to strike. The dim glow of dawn filtered softly through the silk curtains, casting slanting rays of pale gold across the ornate marble floor of Rashid's private chamber. He stood motionless, fingers curled around the edge of his carved ebony desk, the weight of 1,000 tangled truths pressing heavily upon him. The letters bearing the foreign emblem lay scattered before him, each a jagged shard threatening to cut through the fragile illusion of control he had so fiercely maintained. Anissa's quiet footsteps approached, her presence steady as always, a calm harbor amid the storm. She slid a slender envelope toward him, her eyes steady but somber. "This came late last night," she said, voice low, almost reverent. "From a source in the western province, someone who fears the palace's walls as much as its shadows." Rashid's dark eyes narrowed. "I want everything. Names, alliances, betrayals." She hesitated, then met his gaze with unwavering resolve. The man behind all this is Alim Hakim, your most trusted counsel advisor. He plays a game beneath your notice, weaving webs of influence that stretch far beyond these gilded halls. And his debts, they are owed to powers you long thought extinguished. A bitter taste settled in Rashid's mouth. How cruel the irony! The serpent slithering closest to his throne was the very man he had entrusted with his life. The emblem he wore, a shimmering symbol of legacy, felt suddenly heavier, like a chain tightening around his neck. "Prepare for confrontation," Rashid ordered quietly, voice tight with barely concealed fury. "But we move carefully. This is not a blade to wield without precision." Malik appeared like a shadow, his sly smile replaced by something more measured. "Your will, Sheikh. I will watch and unravel. Alim won't see us coming." The chamber's heavy silence pressed on Rashid's heart. In the distance, the call to prayer echoed softly, a haunting reminder of faith and fallibility. Memories of Hassan and Amina intertwined with the cold certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Alone, Rashid allowed himself a fraction of weakness, a flicker of longing for the peace Layla had once brought to this place, and for the innocence his children had been cruelly denied. The faint rustle of silk drew him from shadows of regret. Anisa stepped near, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is someone, a woman who knows secrets darker than even Layla dared speak. She fears what revealing them might cost, but can change the course of this war." Rashid turned sharply, the fire of command reigniting in his eyes. "Bring her, alive, now!" The night deepened, heavy with whispers and unspoken fears. Outside, the desert wind stirred the palms, an invisible menace weaving through the endless sands. Suddenly, the grand doors creaked, and a figure stepped through. Cloaked in midnight silk, face veiled, but eyes blazing with fierce defiance. The faintest scent of rose and sandalwood trailed her, a bittersweet echo of a past wound. Rashid's gaze pierced the shadow, searching for truth in the woman who carried the weight of fragile hope and devastating secrets. "You have seen what others would bury," he said, voice low, commanding. "Speak now. Time is a luxury I no longer possess." Her breath caught. "My name is Zahra," she confessed, voice steady but heavy with burden. "Zahram Palace bleeds secrets, one sewn into silk and whispered behind closed doors. But there is more than one serpent in this garden, and one hides closer to you than you imagine." The candlelight flickered, casting restless shadows upon walls that had borne witness to triumphs and betrayals alike. The air thickened, charged with tension. "Who?" Rashid's voice was harsh, each word sharp as broken glass. Before Zahra could answer, a thunderous pounding shattered the fragile silence, a storm building. Outside, matching the turmoil rising within the palace gates. Dust swirled, and the distant desert roared. But inside, the fiercest tempest was yet to come. Zahra's eyes grew wide, the flicker of fear undeniable. "They're near, sooner than you think." The heavy doors swung open. Footsteps approached, deliberate, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Rashid stepped forward, shoulders squared, heart ablaze with the fierce will of a ruler who refuses to be broken. The empire he had built on secrets, power, and blood stood on the edge of collapse. But as their eyes met, he knew The greatest battle was not for land or gold, but for the illusion of control he'd clung to his whole life. And in the depths of Zahram Palace, where whispers could kill and loyalty was a double-edged sword, the war was just beginning. The figure moved quietly through the shadowed halls of Zahram Palace, every step measured, every breath carefully contained. Rashid al-Fayed stood in his private chambers, the glow of dawn barely casting light on the countless letters and dossiers strewn across the ebony desk. Among them rested the fragile hope and threat that the woman named Zara represented. Her arrival had shattered the silence like an unexpected storm. Now, the pulse of her presence echoed through every corner of his mind. A dangerous fuse ignited beneath the veneer of power. Rashid's dark eyes, usually impenetrable, traced the pattern of her silhouette as she approached. A woman cloaked in mystery, bearing the weight of secrets that could unravel an empire. The faint fragrance of rose and sandalwood lingered in the air, entwining with the delicate scent of jasmine that seemed to belong to the palace itself. "You said there's more than one serpent." Rashid's voice was low, thick with a mix of caution and impatience. "Tell me who else threatens this house." Zara's gaze met his, unwavering yet distant, as if lost in a memory she was reluctant to revisit. "There is a name, and his betrayal is deeper than Layla's revelations suggested. Alim Hakim is no mere pawn. His debts are owed to shadows that reach beyond this palace. He plays a dangerous game, one that could cost us all everything." The weight of her words settled like winter's chill. Rashid's jaw clenched, the betrayal cutting deeper with every breath. The man he had called loyal, his trusted advisor, was the hidden blade poised to strike the heart of his kingdom. A flicker of anger flared, but with it came an unsettling realization. This war was no longer between him and external enemies. It was a collision of blood and trust, woven with cunning and venom. Suddenly, the heavy doors swung open. Malik entered, his usual sly smile replaced by a grave mask. "Alim remains cautious, Sheikh, but even shadows leave traces." Rashid's eyes darkened, voice firm. "Observe him closely. Do not engage until I command. We need the full truth before we act." Malik inclined his head and melted back into the darkness, leaving Rashid alone with the growing storm inside. The silence returned, heavier now. The distant call to prayer drifted softly through the palace, a haunting reminder that even the most powerful bows before fate. Rashid's fingers brushed over the golden emblem at his throat, the legacy he bore and the curse that weighed him down. Months of deception had brought him here, to a precipice he could not ignore. His thoughts shifted to Anissa, the steady flame in the chaos. She had uncovered these threads, weaving together a pattern no one else dared to see. As if summoned by his mind, footsteps approached, light, purposeful. Anissa appeared at the door, her eyes sharp and cautious. "There's more, Rashid," she whispered. "A woman, Zara, came with warnings, but she is not alone. I've sensed others moving in the darkness, their intentions unclear." Rashid nodded slowly. "I will meet with Zara again. We must peel back every layer, however painful the truth. The room seemed to shrink as the weight of the coming confrontation pressed down. Outside, the desert winds stirred, carrying with them the cries of countless forgotten secrets. Hours later, Zahra stood before Rashid again, her voice steady, yet haunted. There is a web tangled in this palace, one that binds not only servants and advisors, but those you hold closest to your heart. Rashid's breath caught, the fragile veneer threatening to shatter. Who dares to undermine me? Who wears the mask of loyalty while planting daggers in my back? She hesitated, shadows flickering in her eyes. Your sister, Samira. The name hit him with the force of a desert gale. Samira, the woman who had been his pillar, the confidant who had stood by him through storms and triumphs. The thought of her treachery was a torment, twisting, cold, and cruel. Rashid staggered for a moment, steadying himself against the edge of the desk. His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Why? What have I missed? Zahra's gaze softened with pain. She walks a razor's edge between loyalty and ambition, protecting the family while bending to forces you have yet to see. Her intentions may not be simple, but the risk to your throne is very real. A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths and the weight of betrayal. Rashid stared out at the vast desert horizon, the endless sand stretching like his kingdom, beautiful but merciless in its harshness. His thoughts turned to Hassan and Amina, innocent in all this darkness, their laughter a fragile melody fading beneath the storm. A sudden knock broke the fragile stillness. Bakir, the palace's head of security, entered with urgency shadowing his features. Your Highness, he said, voice low, there is movement near the northern gates. Unidentified figures, silent but purposeful. Rashid's heart drummed fiercely. The war was no longer theoretical. It had come to his doorstep. He turned sharply to Zahra and Anisa, resolve flashing in his eyes. Prepare the palace. Lock down the gates. Any enemy, seen or unseen, will find Zahram impenetrable. Anisa nodded, already moving toward the exit, her silk robe whispering against the marble, carrying with her the weight of their fragile alliance. Zahra lingered, her eyes meeting Rashid's one final time, before she disappeared into the shadowed corridor. Alone again, Rashid allowed himself a breath, a fleeting moment of vulnerability. The empire, his family, his soul hung in the balance. Outside, beneath the cloak of twilight, figures emerged from the desert's shifting sands. And in that breath, between night and dawn, a single whisper carried on the wind. The crown is threatened, from within and beyond. The true battle for Zahram Palace is just beginning. The first light of dawn crept gently across Zahram Palace, painting the marble floors with hues of soft gold and promising warmth after the relentless storm of secrets and betrayals. Rashid al-Fayed stood by the towering window of his chambers, the desert beyond awakening with quiet resilience, mirroring the fragile hope rekindling within his heart. The weight that had pressed so heavily on his shoulders was beginning to lift, replaced by a newfound clarity, shaped by confrontation and truth. The shadows that once clouded his vision The web of deceit spun within his closest circle. The betrayals of trusted allies and the pain of lost innocence had been faced, not with denial, but with unwavering resolve. Anissa's steps echoed softly behind him. Her presence was steady, a constant anchor amid the turbulence, reflecting the strength and tenderness they had forged together in this battle for their future. "Alim Hakim is behind the unrest," she said quietly. "But his power has crumbled. Zara's courage exposed his darkest schemes, and the loyal ones within the palace have rallied." Rashid turned, gratitude and fierce determination burning in his dark eyes. "The house nearly fell because I let fear silence me," he admitted. "But now the truth has set us free." The woman Zara, cloaked no longer in shadow but in the light of redemption, had become the key to unraveling the palace's deepest wounds. She had come forward with fearless honesty, demanding not vengeance, but justice and healing. In the great hall, where once whispered intrigues had threatened chaos, a solemn gathering unfolded. Samira, confronted with the evidence of her divided loyalties, stood vulnerable yet composed. Her gaze met Rashid's, unguarded for the first time in years. "I sought to protect our legacy," she confessed with quiet remorse. "But I lost my way in ambition. Forgive me, brother." Rashid's breath caught, the bitterness of betrayal mellowing into a profound understanding. "We all carry shadows," he said with soft strength. "What matters is how we face them, together." The court that had once echoed with accusations now resonated with reconciliation. The family, fractured by secrets and fears, began to heal in the presence of honest remorse and shared hope. Outside, the courtyard bloomed with the delicate fragrance of jasmine and freshly blossomed roses, symbols of rebirth amidst the ancient sands. The twins, Hassan and Amina, their laughter a bright melody once more, chased one another through the fragrant garden with the carefree joy that had seemed so distant. Rashid's gaze softened as he watched them, the barriers between father and children dissolving with every gleam of their innocent smiles. Layla, restored not as a mere caretaker, but honored as part of the family, stood nearby, her gentle eyes reflecting the peace that had finally settled over Zahram Palace. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of his private chambers, Rashid finally lay down the armor of command that had protected yet isolated him for so long. Anissa joined him, their fingers entwining in a silent promise forged through trials endured. "Our empire is no longer built on secrets and fear," he whispered, voice heavy with emotion. "It now stands on truth, love, and trust." Her smile, radiant and unguarded, answered him more than words ever could. Outside, the desert sun rose fully over the horizon, flooding Zahram Palace with brilliant light that chased away the last of the night's darkness. The vast dunes shimmered, endless and full of promise, as the palace stood strong, no longer an empire ruled by shadows, but a home shaped by redemption and hope. In the days that followed, Rashid and Anissa's union blossomed not only as a bond of shared strength, but as a new chapter marked by compassion and understanding. The challenges that had tested them had forged an unbreakable partnership, a love that transcended the walls of gold and silk. The palace, once a fortress of isolation and mistrust, became a sanctuary of warmth and unity, where laughter thrived and secrets no longer flourished in silence. And as the night sky stretched vast and clear over the emirate, stars sparkled with quiet brilliance, the eternal witnesses to a saga's end and a love's triumphant beginning. At last, Rashid Al-Fayed had reclaimed not only his throne, but the essence of his soul, entwined forever with the woman who had dared to challenge the darkness. And together, they stepped into a future illuminated by hope, forgiveness, and an unshakable bond.